final-ish thoughts from Michigan State beating Illinois, and are we going to raise the referees' stripes to the rafters at Breslin Center? We talk about it with Greg Waddell. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Illinois fans, I know you're here. Welcome to Locked On Spartans. We do this 5 days a week right here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Please rate, review, subscribe, and join us, because it's not just me. It is Greg Waddell of Sleepers Media for a riveting, calm conversation, I'm sure, about, Michigan State's win over Illinois. It's very rare that we let a basketball win bleed into 2 straight shows, but this was a special one. They, at the Locked On Podcast Network, to pull, just a little look behind the curtain, they want us to go hard with our takes immediately, hit the show running. Don't, just wade into the waters. That's what we're going to do today, though, because, Greg, for those that don't know, you are the Batman to Carter Elliott's Batman on Sleepers Media. You guys are both fantastic at what you do. Carter Elliott on this show many times, Michigan State fan. You, not a Michigan State basketball fan. How would you characterize your relationship with Michigan State fans before we go any further in this show about Michigan State? Does this feel like a road game for you right now?
Understandably contentious. That's what I would use. Like, I fully understand why I am a hateable figure in Michigan sports. I nothing about me as a fan or as a person makes any sense. I would hate me if I was a normal Michigan State fan. So,
okay.
I do. Like, I love doing the show. I think it's my 3rd time on the show. I'm a regular listener of the show. You're my favorite Michigan State-centric place to listen to any analysis anywhere.
Thank you.
But let me make it extremely cler. Agreed to do this before the circumstances of this game played out. I am terrified right now. I feel like Kylan Boswell looking up and seeing Jeremy Fears checking me. Like, I'm shaking right now.
This was planned about a week ahead of time, and I thought this would be like this. Oh, yeah, nice. Hey, Michigan State, where do they stack in the Big Ten? And we will get to that boring conversation here in a little bit. But, folks, those listening on the podcast or that have poor eyesight watching on YouTube, that is a referee shirt that Greg Waddell is currently wearing right now. So a lot of Illinois fans would say that you're wearing a Michigan State jersey right now. I, for one, would just say that that's just a referee shirt, and that's just life in the Big Ten. Fouls happen. Thoughts on the game, Greg? Do you have any thoughts? You and Carter, you guys were short on today's post game. Do you have any thoughts that you just want to get off on this show, or do you want me to go straight to the mailbag and set the table that way?
Set a record 90 minutes. Yeah, it was
smooth.
4 hours. No, I more than anything, I am bummed because we get 2 games between these 2 programs this year, and I want to see both teams at their best for 40 minutes. And whether you want to frame this as a victimizing of Illinois from the officials or not, whether you want to go down the path of Michigan State earning some of these calls, which in my opinion they did. Like, even the calls that, if you want to say 1 to 2 of these was missed, to me, Michigan State put the officials in a tough spot, put pressure on them to make tough calls with the way they played and the way they drew contact from Illinois' best players. So more than anything, like, as someone who is not objectively rooting for Michigan State or Illinois to win this game, I wanted to see what it looks like with Kasparis for 40 minutes. We got 8.5. My guess would be this is a much different story in Champaign, and it'll partially be a much different story just with his availability, not the result of the game, but because he's going to be smarter about not jumping into contact with 4 fouls with 7 minutes left. So I think there's onus on both, but more than anything, frustration. Like, as a neutral party watcher, there were missed calls. There were also earned missed calls, and Kasparis was really dumb. In the end, we were left with, I think, Michigan State playing like, a B plus game, Illinois playing probably a D game without their superstar, and Michigan State gets a win that probably decides the Big Ten race, if we're being honest.
It could. So just to keep it on Kasparis right now, just individually with the foul calls, I I'm a Michigan State fan. We play in the Big Ten. We have for quite some time here, Greg. And what I've known is that, Big Ten officiating as it comes to basketball is as ticky-tacky as it possibly is. Mm-hmm. Let me float out just something for you. Let me see if this is spaghetti that sticks on the wall or not. Is it possible that Kasparis, I'm not even going to try his last name, that Kasparis, who has played in Europe, leagues so physical, where you can shoot your opponent and it not be a foul. Is it possible that him going from that drastically brutal physical league over there in Europe to Big Ten basketball that, this young man has just taken some time to adjust how ticky-tacky it can be, because in his 6 Big Ten games, 2 fouls, 4 fouls, 3 fouls, 4 fouls, and then, of course, yesterday, 5 fouls. Granted, of course, those 4 fouls games didn't happen in 8 minutes like it did against Michigan State, but could that just be a possibility? Because some of these fouls that were called on Kasparis, yes, they were soft. I saw about 9 of those calls be made against Michigan State, though, a few days prior against Penn State. That is just Big Ten basketball. I'm sorry. You'd think Illinois fans would know this too, but I have been corrected the last 24 to 48 hours, Greg. It's interesting. Is that a valid theory, you think, or am I just a silly old Sparty that just sees right through the nonsense that happened at Breslin Center?
No, I think in a sense it is valid. Look, Kasparis fouls a lot. He has defensive issues for sure. I think my rebuttal, but also I don't even want to make it out that I care to rebuttal or argue this. Where I land is truly somewhere in the middle of this, where I thought this was a horribly officiated game. It certainly felt like Kasparis received most of the problematic issue calls in this game. I didn't notice a ton else that made no sense to me other than the phantom technical, which also we didn't get an explanation for, and ultimately gave Michigan State 2 points in a game they win by 2. So, look, to your point about Kasparis, he is a problem defensively at times. Teams have attacked this, hunted it. I thought more than anything, it would have made sense to me if Izzo hit the podium and said, hey, our number one thing on the scouting report was to attack this guy. Because they are so centric on him that if you get him out of the game in any way, you have a huge advantage. If I was told tactically Michigan State prioritized this and earned it, I'd be like, that's another notch on Izzo being the national coach of the year this year. It's genius. It worked. But Izzo got to the podium and said the opposite and said, I would have liked to say we tried to do that. We didn't. It just happened, which makes you feel a little weirder about it. I think, look, you go through his game logs, 4 fouls in 33 minutes against Indiana, 3 fouls in 36 minutes. It is so drastically different to say 5 in 9 minutes is the same as 4 fouls in 37 minutes or whatever he's averaging. And the reality is I thought it was 2 in the first half, 2 in the second half, and then the 5th one, which obviously he earned. But the second one in both halves, both in the first 4 minutes and a half before the first media timeout, is the one where I'm like, you don't see star players get called for that very much. If a call was just made against you, and then you're getting an iffy one at best 3 seconds later, you just don't see it with a player of Kasparis' caliber. Now, again, credit to Michigan State, because this is another point towards why Michigan State's depth is so special. Michigan State can get in a game where both teams foul 22 times or whatever it is, 27 trips to the free throw line, and you could get Akins out with 4 fouls and Jace Richardson comes in and not much changes.
Right.
Illinois
just be deeper.
One guy. Right. Illinois has one guy. It's their whole game plan. And ultimately, Michigan State exposed that. So you really, truly do. Even as me, someone frustrated with it, you have to tip your cap to Michigan State for earning it. It's just one of those things where, for me, even in engaging with Michigan State fans and the way they're celebrating this win, to me, it makes a lot more sense to just be like, man, we were really fortunate and we earned that through what we wanted to do, than being like, the game was evenly officiated.
From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes NFL playoffs even more exciting. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. If you win that first bet, that's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. That's been my favorite part of FanDuel, especially over the last weekend where I hedged my happiness. I bet Commanders plus 8.5. Well, if I got to watch my soul get crushed with the Lions' defeat, well, at least I'm getting paid instantly for it. So thank you, FanDuel, for that. Whether you're betting on your favorite teams or against them, or just looking to add some extra excitement for the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Well, okay, so here's my first snarky comment, and I'll try to limit it. So, and I've heard this from a lot of Illinois fans, is like, oh, they fouled out our best player. Okay, so if you're primed to be like a first team or second team All-American, like, do you just get to wear like lawn red sleeves and you're allowed to commit more fouls? Like, I think those were fouls. Yes, ticky-tacky, but I always get just drawn back to like, this is Big Ten basketball, and I've used this story prior in years past, but we used to play in this youth baseball tournament over here in sunny Warren, Michigan. The officiating, the umpiring was atrocious. And it used to be like a thing amongst teams that you knew that you were going to get some shoddy umpiring, but you just deal with it. It's kind of what it is in Big Ten basketball now. Like, it is soft. It is ticky-tacky. It's also not as ticky-tacky as Illinois fans think it is, because they were complaining about officiating going into this game. Right. And Greg, I had the time today, actually, to look all this up. Since Brad Underwood took over in 2017, 6 games played at Breslin Center. How many times has Michigan State gone to the free throw line more than Illinois at those home Breslin Center games? Just twice. Like, this whole phantom whistle, oh, it's crazier than Cameron Indoor with Coach K. Like, not really. So they came in with the preconceived notion that, oh, they're going to get screwed. They see Kasparis actually get whistled for fouls, at least 4 of them legitimate, in my opinion. So what do we do? Do we just like designate players on the other team that are allowed to commit more fouls? That's the snarky comment that I have. So I'm sorry that you had to be at the wrong end of that, but really, like, what do we just call it different for the other 9 players in the court and let Mr. Special just run into the back of Fiddler when he's shooting? Do we let him just step on Aiken's foot? Like, what do we do?
I hear you. Look, the number one thing I agree with you from your, I don't even think that was a snarky response. It's a totally fair response. I think number one thing I agree with is at least from Illinois fans, because this does boil down to the reason this is still an ongoing conversation is just fan versus fan. Like,
and their media too, and the guys that cover the team for them. I've never seen anything like this, even from Michigan football point of view, and that's as propaganda as it gets over there. Like, they have ramped it up here. So
that's fair. And from the circles that Cart and I are in, like, the national media seems to think this was truly stolen from Illinois, and I'm not influencing that opinion. I'm just hearing it from people at the national level. Right. I think. Look, I think you're totally right. It seemed that the fans from Illinois' side came in ready to play victim here. Yeah. And I think I had a tweet at one point that was like, if Illinois fans expected a favorable whistle at the Breslin Center, what were you thinking? And everyone was like, well, not favorable, but fair. To which I'm like, if you were expecting a fair whistle, like, this is life on the road. And to your point, historically, it says it's been a fair whistle. So the problems in this game, to me, are not indicative of something that is always there at the Breslin Center. That's not. It's just what happened in this game. And I mean, you're saying, I think you're as strongly on the one side of this was a relatively fair whistle as you can be. It sounds like even you are sitting here saying, well, it was 4 fouls. One of those is one of the worst calls we've seen this season. It just is. And
which one?
Mix that in with the other 4, I think is a fair. Like, if that, say the fourth, it's the 4th foul we're talking about, where he falls on the floor and Carson Cooper trips over him, and at best it's a no call. I think if that 4th foul had been the 2nd foul, where, you know, Jeremy Fears gets a little hip check and flails and you get the call, whatever, 5 fouls that are reasonable calls. But there was one that was straight up botched, that even the Michigan State fans that are loudest about this admit that it was botched. And you just do not see that with a star, whether we like it or not. Stars get calls at every level of basketball. It happened to Draymond Green at Michigan State. It happened to Cassius Winston and his head bobs at Michigan State. It happened to Nick Stauskas at Michigan. Stars get calls. And in this game, the most talented player in this league got the opposite of calls. He got, in my opinion, between the way Michigan State attacked him and the way the officials handled him, it felt somewhat targeted at this kid. And I don't mean there was a way to, like, there wasn't a meeting from officials to get him out of the game, but it was an intentional approach by Michigan State to go after this guy, which, again, like, Matt, I'm telling you, it's smart.
It's great.
State should be applauded for doing it. Yeah. But where I get lost is acting like that's not what happened. It is what happened. Like, Jeremy Fears drew fouls by driving in, creating contact, and flailing, and it earned them, but it happened. And there was one miss that makes Illinois fans' gripes, I think, somewhat fair here.
I think it was earned because against Penn State, just to bring that back again, they saw it happen against them roughly 9 times in the second half. We don't have to stay hung up on this conversation because, again, when we said, hey, let's talk next Monday, it's going to be great. We didn't want to talk about other items, and it's clear that, maybe there's a little gap between us two, but nevertheless, let's see if we can break bread here, Greg. Michigan State, squarely in the driver's seat for the Big Ten. Obviously, they're the only undefeated team remaining. Illinois now with 3 losses. Michigan, they have a loss and almost a second loss. They might have a little crack in their foundation. Purdue is Purdue. They're fine, but how far ahead is Michigan State of everyone else? Or are you going to stun us? Or are you going to say that, no, you actually expect, the Purdues or the Michigans to actually still finish this ahead of Michigan State? What have you, Mr. Waddell?
The clear favorite. I mean, in terms of the accolade, the accomplishment of winning the Big Ten, hanging a banner, winning a championship, putting the T-shirts on, Michigan is the undoubted favorite at this point, and you guys have earned that. I mean,
Michigan State.
Sorry, Michigan State.
Okay,
yeah, you guys have earned that. I mean, this winning streak is crazy. 11 straight.
It is.
I think the non-conference games, there wasn't really a quality non-con opponents in there other than North Carolina, and so it was fair to question it, but you can't question. I mean, it's blowout wins in the Big Ten. You're going on the road and winning by double digits. You're just kind of comfortably coasting here. And the nature of this Illinois win is one thing. Bottom line, you won the game. If you split with Illinois, which now you got a chance to sweep Illinois if you go to Champaign and win. In my opinion, 3 games back for them from Michigan State. You're not making up that ground. So it really becomes Purdue and Michigan. And to your point, I guess I'll speak to the team I root for first. Something's off with this Michigan team.
Okay.
And it was off for me before this week of hell. But, they're very good when they play well, kind of Illinois-y in that. When they hit their ceiling, they seem unguardable. But there's ways to exploit them. There's self-induced mistakes, and they just don't look right now. They don't look like a cohesive unit after the loss to Minnesota and almost home loss to Northwestern. So I know it sounds crazy. I'm kind of dinging my own team here. I don't really view Michigan as a serious threat to this at this point. I think it's really Purdue and Michigan State. And I think, again, 7-0, you play Purdue once, it's at the Breslin Center. It's all right there for Michigan State.
What record wins the Big Ten this season? Because I came in hot into the season, even during the season. I said this is going to be such a dogfight amongst the conference. 13-7 could very well win this. And now that we're, even more than a third, if I'm doing my math right, into the season, 14-6, dare I say even 15-5? Is that a number game that you throw around in your head a lot? And where do you settle on that for Michigan State or whoever wins this thing?
I had it at 14-6 preseason, and I very quickly with Michigan State and Michigan going 7-0 to start or 6-0 to start. It's got to change. Both those teams were supposed to lose a game before that, so now the goalposts have moved to 15-5. I would say. I'll say this with where Purdue is at. I mean, they're 7-1. They've got 2 games at home this week. One's against Michigan, so somebody's going to pick a loss. I think we may be getting to a point here where you might need to get to 16-4 to win it outright.
Wow, incredible. It checks out, though. It is very top-heavy, and it's not as top-heavy as I thought it was going into the year. Still more to come, but really quick, this message is brought to you by Prizepicks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prizepicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, Prizepicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Right now for playoff time, well, there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prizepicks. Now, here's how it works. It's very easy. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players, and if your pick hits, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. Like over the weekend, kept it simple. More than 250 passing yards for Lamar Jackson. More than 70 receiving yards for Travis Kelce. Now, ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Guys, that's right. Just $50 for playing. Again, promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's all one word. Smash that in. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prizepicks. It's Prizepicks. Run your game. I do have a psycho take that I do want to bounce off you here, Greg. And that is, as it pertains to believing in Michigan State fully winning this Big Ten title, I'm on the 1 yard line. How could you not be at least there, if not already in the end zone if you're a Michigan State fan? But my psycho take, and I've had this before mentally, before the Illinois game, So I'm going to really start believing if they win on the road at the House of Horrors, that is Madison Square Garden against Rutgers, a team that might not even make the Big Ten tournament, Greg. I'm going to start believing more after that game than I will against a home win against Illinois. Psycho, do I need to check myself into a psych ward, or like how important is this Saturday's game for Michigan State? Because we have no memories of winning there since like 2014. I feel like it's
I don't think it's psycho, especially because Dylan Harper is sensational.
Special.
He's a freak. Yeah, he's a freak. He's Cade Cunningham light. Really, they remind me so much of each other. And then you talk about a Robin and Ace Bailey who was supposed to go second in the draft before the season. So it's but the reality with Rutgers is this has been a bad basketball team, even with the two of them. Now they're coming off good performances back to back. They went 2-0 last week and won at Nebraska, where it seems like nobody can win at. So maybe we should reevaluate a little bit on just whatever has flipped in the last week. But I say this a lot about Rutgers. They don't have role players that would play anywhere else in the conference, let alone at like a Michigan State. So if you can find some ways to frustrate even just one of Harper or Bailey, you're in a pretty good spot. And I hear your point. What I would say, would you rather play at MSG or would you rather go to the RAC?
The RAC. Honestly, God, the RAC. Honestly, that's how miserable I feel when I look at the Madison Square Garden logo. Or just like, oh, hey, look how cool this ceiling is. Like, I hate every aspect of this arena because I have no happy memories of being in there.
That's fair. I may not be as familiar with the MSU history at this point, but in my head, it was like a little bit of a break that you didn't get Rutgers in their true home court.
Yeah. Well, that also speaks to the time Izzo because even before the season, Rutgers fans were like, oh, Izzo got a break here. It's like, well, first of all, you guys set your home venues. I don't think Izzo had much to do with that. He's also too busy having dinner with referees before every home game to even worry about that. But I actually think like Izzo would prefer the RAC over Madison Square Garden just to, sharpen his team and everything. But so he does because he's brave. He's a strong-willed man and a good coach. I'm saying this because I'm a coward, Greg. Like, I'm just squarely not built to watch my team in uncomfortable venues, historically speaking. So just had to get that off because I'm glad you brought up their role players over at Rutgers. And we're going to get way more into Rutgers later this week. We're going to have a Rutgers beat reporter on. Just because I did sit down and I watched the second half, Rutgers versus Nebraska, kept my phone in the other room because I wanted to be engaged in this game. Could I start for Rutgers? Like, is this how bad everyone else that isn't named, Bailey or Baldwin is for that team? How bad is it, Greg?
It's bad. It's really bad. They've had to scrap a lot of guys that they didn't intend on scrapping. Jeremiah Williams was one of the best role players in the conference last year. He has completely fallen off a cliff, which kind of makes sense because a lot of the guys that make up this roster are guys that normally play with the ball in their hands. And what they failed to do, they lost Cliff Amourier, who's one of the better defensive bigs in college basketball.
Yeah, right.
They failed to replace him with any sort of defensive anchor. So they're starting a 6'10", quite frankly, out of shape center. He's just a bigger, out of shape high school kid that hasn't been through strength training yet at college level. And he can score, but he's a liability defensively. He's coming off, even in the Nebraska game, 15 minutes, 4 fouls, 0 rebounds. That's their starting center. So, and he's one of their better players. The role players they brought in just to shoot aren't making shots. So it really is a case study. I hate to say it because I was so excited when these two chose Rutgers. I thought it'd be great for the league. It is truly another point towards the case study of these 5 stars that know they're going to the league, that take their talents to a school that seems random. Right. And if anything, waste a year, maybe even hurt their stock. Ace Bailey has hurt his draft stock playing at Rutgers this year. And it's just kind of sad. You don't watch Rutgers and come away enjoying the experience much.
No, I'm sorry. I said Bailey and Baldwin for that. I meant Harper and Bailey. I don't even know where I got Baldwin from. No good excuse for that one. That's a name that just popped in my head randomly, so I had to correct myself there. But moving along, and look, we're flying high. Number 8 in the nation, Michigan State Spartans, that is. We won a gazillion straight in a row. But let's pump the brakes here. And that's right, Greg. I'm going to let you be the bad guy. That's right. This is a mailbag question we got last week, so I'm sorry to David it took this long to get here. But he writes in, after seeing a good sample size from this Michigan State basketball team, what will our biggest weakness going into this tough stretch of Big Ten games be? Surely there is one. No team is perfect in college basketball, especially this year. But what's the first thing that jumps out to you as what could be a fatal flaw for this team moving forward here, Greg?
Oh man, I love you and I hate you sometimes.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
You do the dirty work here.
Well, I only love you, Greg. I want that to be known.
I appreciate that. So here's where I'm at. Many of the things I would have answered this question with in the last 2 weeks have been answered.
Right.
So
I know.
it really is hard. I'm grasping for straws at like what is going to be the kryptonite. Maybe there just is no kryptonite for this team. Like I'm coming to terms with that as a rival fan that sees you guys as the clear favorite right now and knows that there's something special about this team. What I have said consistently over the last month is that my read on Michigan State, straight up to simplify it as much as possible, is that when they play a team that just quite frankly has less talent or worse players than them, they will not lose a game this season because they are too consistent. They have too many options. The depth is that good. The only thing that's going to hurt this team is when they go up against a team that point blank has 5 players that are better than Michigan State's best 5. And it kind of neutralizes or negates the depth. And I think if you go through, I mean, what are we, 18 games into the season? I mean, you guys haven't lost one that you shouldn't. The losses are to Kansas, who I think we'd all agree probably has more talent. And I think Memphis, who PJ Haggerty was sensational. Tyrese Hunter used to be a 5-star guard. So, you know, I kept thinking, oh, let's wait till Illinois. That's when they see a team that's this talented. And the reality is, I don't know if my hypothesis has proven right or wrong when two-point win over a game without Kasparas. Like, I don't know.
Sure, I know.
So what I do know is this. I mean, you just have straight up better players than Rutgers, Minnesota, USC, and UCLA. Mm-hmm. There's 4 more coming. If my hypothesis is right, I think this Michigan State team is going to be 11-0. And I would say this from when I first kind of floated this as an option of what the story of this season will be. I think Michigan State has risen in my mind of what I truly think the talent is. Like, I probably would have come in maybe second month of the season and said, maybe 7th or 8th most talented team in the Big Ten. No, like this at minimum, even the guys that are always consistent for you. Like Xavier Booker was a 5-star. There's talent in there. Trey Holloman is playing far beyond whatever his recruiting ranking was. Jace Richardson comes off your bench and he's a potential NBA player now. So I think top 4 in talent and a team that's so deep and so solid, you probably don't lose to teams that are worse than you. It's a pretty damn good spot to be. I know I haven't even answered your question, but if there is a fatal flaw, it's this. Are we sure the center spot has really taken the leap forward that we all want it to?
Greg said it. I think so. Like, okay, it's unquestionably they've taken a step forward. Like, there's because the only way to go is up, Greg. Like that's the only way Michigan State could have progressed.
Devil's advocate, because Cart said this out loud and we blame him. This is his take.
Okay, we'll rope him in here. Yeah.
4 points and 4 rebounds in 9 minutes against Illinois from Zappala. 4 points and 1 rebound in 13 minutes.
You know what?
7 points and 5 rebounds against Northwest. He's had 1 game in the last 2 months. If you're telling me Marty couldn't get you 4 and 4, I mean, straight up, we like him more. But here's my thing.
Don't know if he could. I'm going to be honest. Great gentleman. I would love my kids to just be 10% of who Marty was as a human, but I actually don't know if he could have.
He's bad memories of right now.
Okay.
I mean, I'm staying up late watching the games. He had 10-5 starting for Cal and a win over.
Good for him. Good for him. Let's go.
Good. But the point is this: if Zappala is the upgrade, and Kohler's been great, don't discredit him.
Of course.
Like if Zappala is the upgrade, Carson Cooper's closing games for you every game right now.
Yeah, I did see that on my television on Sunday.
It's happening a lot. And after Penn State, I raised that as a question, and people hit me with like, well, that was just Penn State. Izzo was trying to send a message. No, Carson Cooper closed a 1-point game over Illinois, the biggest threat to the Big Ten title. Yeah. So we just say it out loud. Things are great. You're 7-0, but Carson Cooper is your closing center right now. And I think that would be where I would look. If there is a kryptonite, maybe that's a minor red flag that hasn't caught up to you yet.
I don't think that's out of line to say, because while we can acknowledge that there has been steps taken forward in the front court, like, is it enough? We're like, let's say you do run into a team in March that has like a legitimate front court, like good centers. Perhaps we saw no, shortage of length against Illinois, and they gave us the beats in the boards for the first half. Now they rallied in the second half, and they only made it a 1 rebound deficit, but it is that front court length that could be a little scary. But I like that. I'll take that for a good answer, Greg. Do you want to stay miserable? Because we got one more mailbag question that both of us can have some fun with. All right, this is from Spartan 1963, and if you have not gotten over that Detroit Lions game on Saturday, well, guess what? Stick around. We're still going to wallow in this right now because he writes in, what MSU heartbreak is the closest to what the Lions gave us? Now, Greg, I'll bet first here because as it pertains to the Lions this year, it was heartbreak because they had everything set up for them. Number 1 seed, get to host any playoff game that you play, high hopes, woohoo, and then just dash right in front of you because you shot yourself in the foot over and over and over again. When it comes to that genre of heartbreak, I do go back, we're going to stay to the basketball court here, to the 2014 Elite Eight game against UConn. When Michigan State was up, it was either double digits or damn near double digits going into that second half. And, well, it didn't turn out that way. But that was going to be a paved road to the Final Four, not a strong Final Four overall. They could have got a national title that year. That's the heartbreak that I would compare to the Lions on Saturday. Greg, let's end this on an upbeat note. What horrible heartbreak for Michigan State reminds you of Saturday's heartbreak?
Oh, man. So
thanks for joining the conversation again, by the way.
I have two, and I think I switched away from my gut answer at first as you gave me your answer. So my initial instinct was going to say Denzel Valentine, Bryn Forbes, Middle Tennessee.
That's a good one.
Largely because I felt watching Denzel and Bryn and coming, I'm from Lansing originally. I played those guys in high school all the time. They were teammates. They were friends. To me, maybe just emotionally, there was something special about watching these guys who are genuinely lifelong friends do this special thing to the point of we worked so hard that Denzel's the National Player of the Year and we're a 2 seed and we can do this. But the reality is I think that Middle Tennessee State game, no disrespect to Michigan State on it, but like Middle Tennessee State just played well. Like they were hitting shots, right?
Yeah.
So I think part of the answer to compare it to the Lions has to be you self-inflicted some stupid mistakes. What are you thinking? And to me, that takes me to what's, in my opinion, been the best Michigan State team I've seen since I've been alive. The Jaren Jackson, Miles Bridges, Cassius Winston, 30-4 season. You're in the round of 32 against Syracuse. And, you know, maybe say that having who was it? I don't even, Penn Carter. Maybe
that would be Benjamin Carter.
A little trick play there instead of just playing Jaren Jackson, right? Little self-inflicted pain. That's the one I'd go with.
You know what? I think I did overthink it because that was actually in Detroit. Like that is as close to the Lions heartbreak as you could possibly get. So that was good. What a fun way to end this conversation, man. How can everyone not leave in a good mood right now? This is awesome. Anything like fun you want to say or anything nice? Win some MSU fans back? I feel like I got to win some MSU fans back after that too myself.
I'll
say this.
First off, thanks for having me on.
You're the best.
I listen to the show all the time.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, thank you.
You do such a good job. No, I want to say this. I truly do sense and feel that this has been a very special year for Michigan State. I don't think it's anywhere close to over for this basketball team. I mean, I was the biggest Jeremy Fears skeptic possible at the beginning of the season, and seeing this kid turn around and fist pump like they just won a Final Four down 7 because a guy missed a free throw. Like he's everything that you love about Michigan State. So I appreciate any Michigan State fans that have listened to what I've tried to bring as unbiased analysis on this. I'm sure I'm bad at that sometimes, but thanks for anyone who's made it this far and doesn't send a death threat to my house. I appreciate it. And I hope you guys win the Big Ten, but I want to say this. Wow. This is a true thing. Okay. I'm willing to throw Michigan's loss at Purdue or their game at Purdue this upcoming Friday. I'm willing to throw that game. Because I can sit here. Michigan's not winning the Big Ten. They're not good enough. Wow. Braden Smith might be. And if you could tell me that I could clinch Purdue a share of the Big Ten title with a Michigan loss, I'll throw the game. Let's let it happen, Sheehan.
What passionate. That's what I'm talking about, Craig. You're the best, man. Again, this was scheduled when the water was placid and calm. It was nice. And then, boy, howdy, G. Willikers. You over there in the stripes. Muddied the waters at the Breslin Center. So, no, I appreciate you facing adversity right in the face, Greg. 1942, Don Julio on me next time we get together, my man. But until then, gang, we will be back tomorrow. We got Ryan O'Blennis of Spartans Illustrated out. We're talking portal, talking recruiting for football, sport we haven't talked about in a few days. But, guys, until then, hey, love you all. Go green.